to show you the two different methods that you can sew the arms, legs, and ears to the body. The first one is easier for beginners and a more durable hold. They're sewn flat into the seam. So, for example, the ears are sewn into the seams of the head, lining up the outer edge to the dart. And the arms will also be sewn into the body seam so that they can move back and forth, aligning the bottom to a small triangle here. And then the legs also sewn flat in seam. Now that's a lot of fabric thickness for such a small body, so I recommend hand sewing with a upholstery thread. It's thicker than normal thread, and use a back stitch for that. Or you can ladder stitch if you're more comfortable with that. And you can sew in the round. That means it's not flatly attached, but sewing in a circle. And what you would do is you would first cut off, preferably before you sew the piece, trim off 1/8 inch from the top of each piece here so that you can sew with a 1/8 inch seam allowance instead of 1/4 inch as used in the pattern. These ones were sewn in with 1/4 inch seam allowance. So the center seam of the arm will meet right under the center seam of the head here. The ear still matches the outer side of the ear to the dart. And then this is a 28 millimeter distance between the center of the head seam and the inner ear. And down at the bottom, there's just about 3 to 4 millimeters between the inner leg seam and the center seam. And it's also sewn in the round. So what you can do to properly align your pieces is use your pins and use a water-soluble pen or chalk to align the pieces. So you can see here that there's already some markings that I made. I measured the distance from here and made the same distance here. I pin the piece on. And that's just pretty rough because I'm going to be doing some of the measurement by hand. You'll see in just a moment. Now I'm going to trace 1/8 inch of a line along the ear. And then kind of press it down into the plush a bit and then draw the approximate stitch line on the head itself, going all the way around. That gives me a guideline to work off of, so I'm not just getting really crooked results easily. And then if you're using the embroidered ears and there's threads here that you trimmed, I highly recommend using some fray check or super glue to secure those threads so that they don't unravel. Now, if you are trying to sew through this embroidered part, it's very thick. You'll probably need to use some pliers to pull the needle through that section. I'll just show you a basic ladder stitch for the arm. Make sure each piece is very firmly stuffed. I like to use small pieces at a time and firmly stuff with hemostats because you can really pack it in there quite easily without using fingers. And if you trimmed your seam allowance 1/8 inch down after you have already sewn the two pieces together, that's fine. All you need to do is start sewing a little bit extra in the top section because it's not really going to be connected there anymore. It can unravel a bit, so that's shut again. I like to do a few stitches for that part. And I'm sorry my hands are so shaky, I really can't help that. And hey, if I can do this with shaky hands, then you can do it too. All right. So I'm kind of going to line up the piece and kind of check the alignment of where it is against the one that's already sewn on. And I really like to use a mirror for that, or if I don't have a mirror available, I can use my phone and flip the image horizontally because it kind of gives you a better view of what's going on than what you can see with your naked eye. So to do a ladder stitch, this is kind of tricky with the giant head in the way. Just maneuver as best as you can. I kind of stitch with my hand this way. And in. And then back up into the arm. You have to take really good care not to sew your own finger. You can use a thimble if that makes you a bit nervous. Now, because the head's in the way, I'm pressing the needle down. This is not the pointy end of the needle, but the other one, down into the head and guiding the sharp tip out. If you have slightly thinner hand sewing needles, it makes it easier because the hand sewing needle can bend just a little bit and just be a bit more flexible to work with. And again, this is the slightly more advanced way to attach the arms. So it is quite a lot faster to sew them flat into the seam. It's just a different look. And this one, it looks like it's standing, but it's really going to be balancing with the weight of the tail. If you don't have a giant tail or something for the plush to lean against, then it's not really going to stand on its own. And even then, it's kind of shaky. As you sew it, pull the threads shut tight. If you have any fibers sticking through, you can use your hemostats and just push the stuffing back in. It's going to actually work a lot better if you push the stuffing in very firmly and then have the oops, sorry for that shakiness of the camera. Have some empty space in this 1/8 inch area that you're sewing so that you're not fighting against that stuffing constantly. And I just wrap the thread around my finger because it helps me get a good idea of the tension as I pull it shut. And my stitches are about 3 millimeters in length each. And I will honestly take a couple stitches, 2 or 3, before I actually go ahead and tighten them all at once together. Makes it a little bit faster. And I'm not going to complete all of the stitching because it takes me like 30 minutes to just sew all 3 pieces down. And you can change the angle of the hands by either positioning them up, hello, or if you increase the seam allowance down here, then they'll be even further down. And the legs you can also sew either standing or sitting. And if you want to sew them sitting, you'll probably have to modify them by shortening this side and lengthening this side like this, and that's at the fabric cutting section, not now. Like now it's too late. If you want to sew the leg on, it doesn't quite match, so a longer back leg fabric will help you get that sitting look better if you're going to ladder stitch something like that. Anyway, I hope this was helpful.